We can report some good news right off the bat. Spoke to Police Chief Kay Hoffman not too long ago. She tells us that the bomb squad went through every room and every corner of this building and did not find any sort of explosives. The big question around this investigation was this man's motive, why he came into this Rite Aid and shot the employee that he did. Police don't have the answer to that yet. The mayor says before he even thinks about filling in these holes in the city's roads, he's going to have to fill a big hole in the city's budget. They stayed late just so they could work on this legislation, and ultimately it passed with a pretty strong majority. 76 to 34 was the vote to raise Michigan's minimum wage, and here is what that would look like. They've made these ribbons here, so if you see these on people, if you're going to the event, you know where they're from, and shirts. And Jane, this is just, another example of really in her short time on this earth, the impact that Lacey's had nationwide, but specifically on this community here. We begin with a shooting this evening on Lansing's south side that led to a car chase with police and multiple arrests. Police couldn't confirm whether it was related to another shooting incident yesterday, not far from where this one happened. I'm going to keep this inside of the car, this thermometer, and we're going to put this cup of ice in the cup holder there, close it up. It's a little after 6 o'clock right now. We're going to come back here at the end of the show, so roughly a half hour, and we're going to show you just how quickly the inside of this car can heat up. From what we've seen, police are not actively trying to put these fires out. I think they're taking more of an approach of letting them go out on their own and hoping that the crowds eventually disperse. When we hear poor condition in Michigan, the first thing many people think about is our roads. Ingham County is now taking steps to protect them.
You remember that sparked a massive evacuation and manhunt. And Joe, what did you learn from this exclusive interview? Well,
Greg, a lot of people, I'm sure, already have their minds made up if they've seen this story from yesterday that this man is a criminal. But his attorney and his close friend paints a very different picture. Now, Gary Peterson is a husband and a father of 4 with 7 grandchildren. He's also a terminally ill man, and his attorney says he was certainly not in his normal state of mind on Wednesday. Family man, former Marine, and friend you could count on. That's how Bert Burleson describes 63-year-old Gary Peterson, seen here in police custody following a standoff after Peterson allegedly threatened to detonate explosives in a medical facility to get his hands on prescription drugs.
If you knew Gary, this is not Gary. He would not do something like this. That would be your first response. And the family, of course, is very shocked and very distraught.
Burleson, Peter's attorney and close friend, says his client faces serious health issues and yesterday was not acting in his right state of mind.
There's some impulsivity involved. Honestly, don't think he really knew what he did. And it was based upon the medication that he had been prescribed or unprescribed. Gary has been diagnosed with terminal emphysema. He does not have much time left, quite frankly. Though the string of events were serious, from the robbery at this medical center to the lockdown in Peterson's neighborhood, Burleson says the family asks the public be understanding. And in terms of how the neighbors here view the man who is responsible for putting this neighborhood on lockdown, you might expect them to have some sort of resentment, but in fact, it's quite the opposite.
I've heard he was a very nice man. Pain and illness can really cause you to do some silly things.
They've been very kind neighbors, and I hope that they'll stay my neighbors.
In part 2 of our investigative piece, Silent Justice, Joe Khalil examines a controversial new state law that changes the framework in which judges handle lawsuits filed against the state.
Now, as it turns out, many judges chose not to speak out about this issue because they say they thought staying quiet would mean a pay raise from the state legislature. In November, it took our state legislature just 2 weeks to change an entire court system in place for 35 years.
They want to rig the courts, they want to stack the courts, they don't like what's coming out because we follow the law.
Rosemarie Aquilina was one of 5 Ingham County judges who handled lawsuits brought against the state's government. That is, until the new Court of Claims bill passed, which allowed the state Supreme Court to take certain cases midway through away from Aquilina and hand them to a different judge in the appeals court. She didn't hide her objections.
This is the beginning of the dismantling of the justice system in Michigan.
This is judge shopping in its worst form.
Many Democrats, including Senator Gretchen Whitmer, say the real reason for the Republican-sponsored bill is to cherry-pick certain cases and put them in the hands of the state Supreme Court, which, as they point out, has a Republican majority.
Is it to take the nerd
fund questions out of the Ingham County Court so they can handpick who determines them. Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening here.
Why now? This has been 30, 40 years. Why now?
Because the most important cases are coming down. We have the bankruptcy case. We have the Open Meetings Act violations. We have teacher pensions. We have all sorts of important cases in front of all 5 of us.
But if this law were such a miscarriage of justice, why weren't more judges outraged like Aquilina? Well, the answer was unsettling. 6 News obtained emails sent among dozens of circuit court judges showing many thought that if they stayed quiet, lawmakers would reward them with a higher salary. We are currently hoping for our first pay increase in over 10 years. Adjusting the compensation is more important to the administration of justice than Senate Bill 652, says Circuit Court Judge Charles Johnson. Former president of the Judges Association, Lita Popke, says we do have legislative issues. Most notably is our current strategy to restructure how judges are compensated. We can't afford to jump into a legislative train where we may negatively impact an issue of concern to our membership. And this from Oakland County Judge James Alexander, as reported by the Detroit Free Press. If y'all want to engage in a suicide mission that will impact our ability to get compensation, so be it. Count the votes. You may not like it, but it's big boy politics. I spoke with Judge Alexander, who told me lawmakers didn't promise he'd get a raise. He says he just assumed it.
Count the votes. People were opposing something that was very obviously going to go through the legislature. You pick your fights. You pick the ones that can be helpful that you can win. This one we couldn't win.
All of these judges denied getting a sweet deal from lawmakers, but just 2 days after the Court of Claims bill passed, House Bill 5153 was introduced to raise the salary of those very same judges.
I understand why it creates some degree of suspicion.
State Rep John Walsh sponsored the bill. He says the timing does seem suspicious, but denies ever making any backdoor deal with judges.
No one in this legislature, including me as the bill sponsor, could have promised anyone action for neutrality or support on the Ingham County matter or any other matter.
To Walsh's credit, we've searched but found no evidence of any direct link between the legislature and these judges. But the fact remains, these people, whom you've elected to administer justice, evidenced by these emails, decided to put their legal ideals aside in exchange for the possibility of a few more bucks in their pocket. A celebration turned chaotic in just a matter of moments. Hundreds poured out into the streets of Cedar Village, an off-campus housing area just outside MSU. East Lansing police needed 3 additional agencies, including state police, to help keep the crowd in order. Police say they arrested many of those involved. Officers surrounded the larger fires, but kept a safe distance. From what we've seen, police are not actively trying to put these fires out. I think they're taking more of an approach of letting them go out on their own and hoping that the crowds eventually disperse. A strategy that seemed to work until this last major fire began. That's when state troopers in riot gear cleared the street.
Mostly everything that was burning was furniture, tree limbs, that type of material.
East Lansing's fire department responded to at least 50 fire-related calls and, like police, requested backup.
Is this something that you are ready for whenever there is a big game?
It's hard to predict when this stuff is going to happen. We did not have anything lined up for that. That's why we ended up calling some mutual aid from other surrounding departments.
And the department's message to students?
There are ways to celebrate other than, putting other people in danger, setting stuff on fire.
In East Lansing, Joe Khalil, 6 News.